Hey everyone, welcome to Broadband Deployment News. The NTIA has come out and confirmed that they're planning on sticking to their target date of June 30th as far as when they announce how much each state should get from their BEAD program or from the BEAD program. Be right back and we'll talk about that. Hey, thanks for joining me. Rick Uzzi here with Broadband Deployment News. So this came out on NTIA's blog last Friday. So everybody's been kind of wondering what's going to happen with broadband challenges and how that's going to work into timelines for when the NTIA decides how much money they're going to give each state for BEAD, because the money that they allocate is going to be determined based on the next broadband map. And they are going to look at the total number of unserved locations in a state compared to the total number of unserved locations throughout the entire area of the country, and I think maybe even territories as they factor that in. And that will determine how much each state gets. So the more unserved areas a state has and relative to the entire country, the more money they're going to get. So there's a lot at stake there for each state or eligible entity. So a lot of people are concerned because the first broadband map that we've seen has not been that accurate, because the first broadband fabric that we got was not that accurate. The broadband fabric was something that was created by CostQuest, and it is supposed to determine every single broadband serviceable location in the United States. And then on top of that, that came out in prior to June, and then from June through September, internet service providers then overlaid their availability data on top of that fabric to determine, okay, at each one of these broadband serviceable locations, is anybody providing service? And then what's the maximum upload and download speed at that location? And that was then used to produce the first broadband map, now first new broadband map, and that's being called a pre-production draft, because we realized pretty quickly that the fabric was not that accurate. So that came out November 18th. Internet service providers and others that had access to the fabric were actually allowed to challenge the fabric data starting in mid-September. And then the map came out on November 18th, but that did not include any challenge data that had already been done. So when people saw the map and they saw thousands of addresses missing, it's very possible that those were being corrected on the fabric at that time or even prior to that, but that would not have been included in the first iteration of the map. And then the map came out, and then consumers, anybody could go to the map and challenge their own address. There could also be bulk challenges made. You could challenge both location, and you could challenge whether or not your particular location or a particular location is getting the speed, not the speeds necessarily, but the type of technology. You could challenge the speed, but the type of technology primarily, is it really fiber in this location? And then the advertised product there. So if it says that you could get a gig, but you call and you can't get a gig, you can only get, maybe it's DSLs available there, then that can be challenged. You can challenge the speed as well, but that does not need to be responded to by the ISP, and it's only going to be looked at probably in really serious situations by the FCC at this point. So areas where maybe it's on the cusp of is it broadband or not, they might want to look at if there's it looks like there's a pattern of that being incorrect, those kinds of things. But all of those challenges are being done now, and we have a new fabric. The new fabric has the original challenges that were done from the first fabric, and is now what internet service providers are using to upload their next round of availability data. So I don't think that I don't think that fabric is a living document right now, set of data, because ISPs are having to go in there right now and put in their information. So I don't think there's any fabric challenges that are going to make it into this next map unless the FCC sees something really significant. As far as availability challenges, some of that, I guess, availability might make it, because that's being done by consumers all the time. So the question is, what is this next map going to look at, and what kind of information, what kind of updates is it going to have? Now, as I read through this here, you'll see they're trying to balance, and I said I could see this prior. I mentioned that this was probably the case. They're trying to balance, how quickly can we get these funds starting to be put to work versus do we want to delay and make sure that the map is even better? But, sometimes you can't wait for something to be perfect. You want to make sure that it's really, really good, as accurate as possible. But if it turns out that the amount of discrepancy now on locations and availability is to a point where it's really not going to be that meaningful, they're going to push forward. If you've got tens of thousands of things that are wrong, then that could make a difference. But if it's, individual locations and small areas here and there, it's probably not going to make a significant difference in the amount that each state's going to get. And that's really the first key thing that we want to do, because then we can continue to make the map better. But we want to make sure that we can get the NTIA to put that stake in the ground and says, okay, here's when we're going to say how much each state is going to get. And if the data is good enough to make sure that that is really accurate and there's not going to be a significant loss for a state, then I think that's the right thing to do. So let's read through this real quick. So it says, in order to meet the urgency of this moment, to connect the unconnected, we continue to target June 30th as the date by which we will allocate each state and territory BEAD program funding for high-speed internet service. NTIA and the FCC have worked closely with states to assist them in the process of improving the national broadband map to achieve this goal. We've held one-on-one sessions with dozens of states and territories throughout this process, as well as hosted twice weekly office hours with the FCC to answer questions from state broadband offices. We've also engaged with more than a dozen grassroots advocacy organizations representing consumers in underrepresented populations to inform them and their membership on how to submit challenges. States, counties, and other organizations have been productive partners in the process to improve the FCC's map, and we know their engagement is producing a better map. The FCC already has received over 1 million challenges to provide or reported availability data and has updated the map's underlying fabric to add more than 1 million additional locations. Through this work, the map is becoming more accurate and will continue to get incrementally better. Again, I'm thinking that the updating of the 1 million additional locations would have been done prior to this first map coming out, obviously, and prior to this current version of the fabric that now is being looked at by internet service providers. I'm thinking it was prior to that, because obviously they had to bring out the new fabric so our service providers could put their information on there. We have heard concerns from some states and other stakeholders, and we've received requests to delay the timeline to give states more time to participate in the FCC's processes for challenging and improving the national broadband map. Several other states have expressed to us that they want us to maintain this target so they can begin developing quality plans and begin their subgrant programs as soon as possible. So you've got some states saying, hey, you need to delay this, and other states are saying, hey, we need to get moving. We want to get the money as quickly as possible. So they're looking at two sides and trying to balance the two goals. Unfortunately, a delay in the timeline would mean a delay in providing funding to communities who desperately need it, and it will not address many of the process concerns we've heard. Both NTIA and the FCC are committed to iteratively improving the national broadband map. As we drive toward June 30th, we will continue to partner with the states and the FCC to improve the accuracy of both the location and availability data, so that the map includes as much data as possible when we allocate funds. Every day we delay is another day that communities are not connected. We feel the urgency to getting this funding out the door so it can be put to work for everyone in America. We encourage states to continue to submit challenges to this map, which is meant to be a living document. Continued improvements will move us that much closer in making internet for all a reality. So, hang on one second. Oh, I don't have that set up. Let me go back to where I was. So, you read this statement here where it says, both NTIA and FCC are committed to iteratively improving the national broadband map as we drive toward June 30th. We'll continue to partner with states and the FCC to improve the accuracy of both the location and availability data so that the map includes as much data as possible when we will allocate funds. So originally, the NTIA came out, I think it was maybe a combination, NTIA and FCC said, hey, if you want your challenge data in the map, you need to get that information to us by, I think it was January 13th, I believe. Yeah, it was February. It was the 13th. It was Friday the 13th. I remember that now. So they said you should get that in there by then, and then you'll have a good shot of getting your challenge data into the next or the first production version of the map. And I had said that deadlines are not always really that strict because there's usually some wiggle room in there. So they're giving people a deadline, hoping that they'll get as many people as possible will get that in. And then if people kind of dribble that in later, a little bit later, they'll be able to maybe take that into account as they look at all of that data, look at the challenges, and have to act on that. Each ISP, one reason they gave that date may be that each internet service provider has 60 days to challenge that information. So if somebody got it in by, let's say, mid-January, then let's say 60 days out, that ISP would have to respond. And if they don't respond, then the FCC makes a determination from that. So that may be part of what's going on there. So if internet service providers or other entities, or communities, states, tribal governments, whoever, are getting in challenge data now, that still could be looked at. So in other words, the next map is not set at January 13th, but they could still be looking at those challenges. And, again, ISPs have 60 days to respond. I don't think most would wait that amount of time. They would, well, who knows? But so again, this could be something where it's really more like 60 more days that before the NTIA says, okay, we need to put a stake in the ground and this is it. They could be looking at challenges that come in all during this time and trying to make some determinations on those, especially if they're big ones. Again, if it's the home here or there, it's not going to make a significant difference in the amount of funding that a state's going to get. It may make no difference at all, right? So I think that is telling me that while there was a January 13th deadline that communities and other stakeholders can get challenges in later and have that information looked at. So they're encouraging those kinds of entities to go ahead and continue to submit this information. As they say, the map is a living thing. So the map is going to be updated every 6 months because ISPs are going to have to enter their availability data every 6 months. So we will have a new map, and that will reflect corrections that were not made in this most recent fabric or availability data, and it will reflect new locations that are added. It will reflect plans that change. If ISPs upgrade the speeds that they make available, if they suddenly roll out fiber in an area that they didn't have before, that'll be reflected. If they add or upgrade the speed that they're offering, their maximum speed goes up, all of that stuff will be reflected, as well as corrections and those kinds of things. So again, this is a recommendation, I would say, for everybody to keep pushing forward on those challenges. And again, looking at the number of corrections that they already made in the first fabric. This was prior to this current fabric coming out. There have been a lot of things that have been fixed and corrected, so that's good news. So hopefully a lot of those mass correct data that we saw that states were saying we're challenging 20,000, 80,000 locations, hopefully all of that stuff was already fixed, because there could be internet service providers that had already challenged that data and said, wait a minute, you've got all of this wrong. So we'll see. I don't have the chat set up where I can show it on the screen, but I see Conway Fan says, my state, Virginia, found 358,000 locations were listed as having broadband of 25.3 on the FCC map, but do not in their state collected data and map. They submitted a challenge of those locations on Friday the 13th. So they did get them in on time. So yeah, that should be taken care of. So let's see. So the locations were 358,000 were listed as having broadband of 25.3, but I guess you're saying the state map did not show that. So they will challenge that. And then if there's a broadband provider out there that can step up and say, hey, wait a minute, we really do serve this, and they can provide documentation that they do, the FCC is going to have to determine who wins that challenge. Now, this is that cusp speed that I was talking about, where an internet service provider comes out and they say, yeah, we provide 25/3. And they're doing that because they have let's say they have DSL in the area. I know Conway Fan 98 has DSL in his area. He's trying to he's waiting for fiber. We've had this, we've talked about this before. So he's waiting for fiber, and it's very possible that the internet service provider there or service providers there who are providing DSL put 25/3, and maybe some folks get that. DSL is one of those technologies where the closer you are to the central office, the higher your speed is. So it could be that there are some in the area that are getting that, but it's very possible that there are many in the area that, as those phone lines get longer, those runs get further and further out, the speeds drop. So it may say 25/3, and it could be that people are getting far less than that. I know you are. I remember you were 10 or maybe at best. So that may be what we're seeing there. So anyway, the good news is a lot of challenges have been submitted. The NTIA recognizes that that states and others have concerns about this. They're talking to the states, they're talking to stakeholders, but they also, again, are balancing. They're talking to other states that are saying, hey, we need to move on. We need to get moving on this. And those are states that maybe have less of these problems, less challenges. But they're trying to balance that, that goal of getting internet, getting these funds out and getting internet in the ground, let's say fiber in the ground as quickly as possible, compared to waiting 60 days longer to try to make incremental changes to the map. I think if there were really serious, significant changes that were going to impact funding, they'd be considering it more closely. So we just don't know. We don't know what kind of challenges they've gotten that have already been resolved. And they see the numbers as far as what looks like really is incorrect. So hopefully they're making the proper decision there. I guess we'll just have to wait and see. Thanks for joining me, and thanks for watching. If this was interesting, if you give me a thumbs up on the video, I'd appreciate it. If you're not subscribed, click the subscribe button, click the bell, and you'll be notified when I'm live. Thanks a lot. Take care. See you next time. Bye-bye.